Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Idlewood Elementary School Boundary Adjustment and Smoke Rise Resource Planning Community Information Meeting. We're thrilled to have this opportunity to engage with you over the next 90 minutes. Tonight's presenter is Mr. Eric Hofstetter, Chief Operating Officer, and we are also joined by several cabinet members who are here to assist in answering any questions relevant to their divisions. And they are Dr. Norman Sauce, Dr. Dr. Norman Sauce, Chief of Student Services, Dr. Trisilla Weaver, Chief of Access and Opportunity, Dr. Keisha Towns, Chief of Wraparound Services, and Chief Tracy Whaley, Chief of Public Safety. To ensure we have enough time to present all the slides, we ask you to submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen during the presentation. Also, I will add that we have 2 interpreters online for Spanish and Amharic who will assist us using the chat box. At the end of the presentation, we will read each question and the appropriate chief will provide a response. If we are unable to address all questions by 7:25, we will use the QR code that will be displayed on the screen, allowing you to submit additional questions through Thought Exchange. We will also, in addition, we will respond to those questions in writing within 7 days and post the responses to the meeting flyer that is posted on the DCSD website. Before I turn it over to Mr. Hofstetter, I'd like to see if Dr. Horton, our superintendent, would like to greet you and share a few words.
Sure. Good evening, and thank you, Dr. Williamson, for facilitating this for us. We are here. We heard our stakeholders at our last session, and also we understand the assignment, which is to getting into the space to really hear from all constituents who will be impacted, whether students are transferring or you're receiving. Again, this is an opportunity for us to share information, and we will listen and take questions. But I want to be clear of what an informational session is, and that is for us to provide the community that we're serving with what the current strategy is around the Idlewood and Smoke Rise boundary adjustment. And I hope you all are, just for the announcement, we are returning to school tomorrow. We finally got the state of emergency cleared by the county, and we're looking forward to all of our beautiful children, students, and families engaging with us on Friday for school. Without further ado, I want to turn it over to Chief Hofstetter so he can get us started.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Horton, and welcome everyone. And thank you for joining us here tonight. We look forward to hearing from you. I just wanted to go over a quick idea here about what we're going to present, but at the end, we really want to hear from you all as well. All right. Next slide, please. All right, just our quick agenda here. Well, I'm going to bring you up to date on the background of why this is happening and the current situation. I'll take you through the redistricting process and what the recommendation to the board has been, and then we'll get in. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. A little technical difficulty just threw me out, and I don't know, started restarting. But in the meantime, we'll continue to move. So yeah, then we'll talk about resource planning. So thank you. Next slide. Okay, so here's kind of the situation that we're in. We do have a renovation planned at Idlewood Elementary School. This has been planned now for several years. We are looking at starting this project this summer. We look to complete it by 2027, sooner if possible. It was what we call a major renovation or a heavy renovation, which includes kitchens, bathrooms, HVAC, the roof, some exterior work, and a lot of other things that will happen in order to bring that school up to a more modern, contemporary code. The biggest issue that we currently have at Idlewood, and that we're going to talk about here in a moment, is that the school's at 115% at capacity. And again, for this project, a smaller student population at Idlewood will obviously help make this project more of a success and a little bit safer. Next slide, please. All right, just a quick rundown on these the current situation of the capacity of the schools. And this kind of shows you the schools, the elementary schools within the Tucker cluster. So here you can see Brockett Elementary School. It has a capacity of just over 500 students, and they have about 114 seats. You'll see Idlewood. The school has a permanent capacity of 768, and they're running close to almost 900 now since we've started these presentations. They do have 12 modular units that are in use as well in order to accommodate that. You can see where Livesey Elementary has got a little over, same situation there. Midvale with some seats, and of course Smoke Rise Elementary School, which was built at a capacity of 984 students, currently has just about 537. So we're looking at approximately a little over 400 seats that are available. It is important to note that when Smoke Rise, the new Smoke Rise was built in 2021, it was built to the new district's prototype, which was a 984 seat elementary school. So all the other schools built at that time are very similar layouts and similar capacity. The intent of that, of rebuilding Smoke Rise at that level, was to help relieve the overcrowding or the increase in student population for that area as forecasted. And in 2020, those discussions began for redistricting. Unfortunately, when the pandemic came and schools were sent, to an online learning or remote learning, those conversations never were resolved, and therefore the boundary was never resolved. All right, so basically what we're doing now is picking up the conversation from 2020. Next slide, please. All right, so this just kind of gives you a heat map of where our families live. And as you can see down in the Idlewood area where you have that bright red, it's a very small boundary, but it's a very dense boundary. And that's evident by obviously the number of children that currently go to Idlewood. You can see the other area schools. Obviously, the brighter it is, that's where the heavier concentration of our students live and go to those schools. Okay, so that's just for reference there. And next slide, please. All right, just a quick note about Idlewood Elementary here, right? We're running just over 885 students. And obviously the idea is that if we can move some of those students out of there, one, it's better for overall safety and equity for schools and for children, but also to help with the renovations and make things go a little bit quicker and faster so we can bring that building up to contemporary standards. All right, next slide. And then again, Smoke Rise Elementary, which we just spoke about when it opened in 2021, and some of the brief history of the planning for that school. Okay, next slide. And just questions about the overall enrollment forecast for those elementary schools in the Tucker cluster. As you can see, there's a little bit of growth, but it's kind of spread around. So we're not anticipating, none of the models currently show any further enrollments. So part of this is to help level off the enrollments, and that is being handled by our Student Assignment Planning Committee. And if we have any members that are currently joined us tonight, we thank you for your service to that initiative. Okay, next slide. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how the boundary process works. This is spelled out quite very meticulously in Board Policy AD. Primarily, we do have public meetings, and that's what we've had here. We've had the meetings at Smoke Rise because that is where students will be having that boundary changed. And we went through, we had an input process, we've had a couple of meetings, and of course, a recommendation to the board went to the January 13th meeting. Okay, next slide, please. All right, a couple of the guiding principles that we work, and you could probably see them there. We operate on four goals or what we call guiding principles. One, we want to prioritize that equitable access to high quality instruction. Two, we're going to evaluate through a district-wide perspective, not just a school perspective. So we have to look at all the surrounding areas in order to do that, and we have to maintain that evaluation through that district-wide perspective and the impacts that it has. Third, we're going to try to minimize disruption to the greatest number of students as possible. And then obviously we're going to comply with any board policies and associated state and federal guidelines that may come into play. Okay, so those are the guiding principles on which we try to, we were asking to solicit the feedback, and we're going to go further on the next slide. And again, within policy AD, board policy AD, it sets up a series of criteria and how decisions are made. We went through the primary criteria of geographic proximity, instructional capacity, and projected enrollment. And then obviously when we need to drill down a little more than that primary criteria gives us, then we look at options based on 7 different secondary criteria. The feedback we received out of those 3 meetings is obviously instructional capacity was the most prioritized by our community. And then we looked at, on the secondary criteria, we had condition of facility along with things such as safety and traffic patterns, and then followed by a number of others. But those were the 2 highest secondary criteria that was prioritized by the community input. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, so here is the recommendation where we arrived at. And you can see in the Idlewood area, which is in more of that navy blue or the darker blue color, just to the north of it is the Brockett Elementary School, which is in the lighter blue, and then the Smoke Rise, which I guess we can call a pink for our purposes here tonight. What we are looking at in the recommendation based on staff through the process out of a number of options that were contemplated and 2 options that were presented was to move the area in pink down by Idlewood Elementary School to readjust their boundaries to Smoke Rise through this process. And again, for all the aforementioned reasons. That area there alone, based on the density we've seen prior, is approximately 400 students that currently go to Idlewood Elementary School. And we would look at readjusting them to Smoke Rise Elementary School beginning in August of 2025. So that would be for next school year. Okay. All right, next slide, please. And this is just a little bit further in-depth look. And again, it helps you appreciate the density and the amount of children in that small geographical area. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So let's talk a little bit about resource planning. And there's a number of things that the district has to contemplate. One of the reasons why we're bringing this to the board for a recommendation in January is to allow staff enough time to work together to be able to resource many of these options and other things that come into play as well. There's a number of instructional and operational and academic processes that needed to be addressed. Additionally, we want to give our families an ample amount of time for their planning for next school year as well. Okay. Okay, and I think you can see there about staffing impacts. So a couple of things that we look at. Previous slide, please. Okay, right there. So you have a number of areas that we're looking at and when those processes happen, and also the timeline, right? So one, we're going to look at transportation for bus service. Now, obviously, anyone who is in that area to be rezoned to Smoke Rise would be offered transportation services. But that also plays to the impact of, what's the impact going to be at Smoke Rise Elementary School? Currently, that area there is primarily a bus service to Idlewood. We anticipate that the majority of that would continue. So most of the increase or the impact on that traffic right now, we're estimating to be largely through buses, not so much on the car rider lines. So those processes will be looked at schools and leadership and through operations and transportation, along with a number of other divisions. And we look at that timeline in spring and summer, and therefore we can get that scheduling out and to our folks with as much notice as feasibly possible. We also look at traffic planning, and we work with the City of Tucker and our public safety division. So we're always concerned about congestion along our roads. And we do have that in many of our schools, and we have a good working relationship with the City of Tucker. And again, that process would happen upon approval, and we'll start looking at different impacts that it may have, and also perhaps different mitigations that may be needed, but before the start of school. Other school operational procedures, such as, how to conduct lunch and schedules, how to, dismissal procedures and class sizes and scheduling and all that. There's a number of those processes that will have to be addressed, and that's primarily through our schools and leadership. But that is a joint effort with many of our divisions, and those items can start being worked on once upon a board approval. Again, that's a spring summer kind of timeline. And then again, things such as registering for redistrict facilities. Again, that runs through our student and assignment and planning. And again, you can see a timeline there, mostly a spring and a summer. Now, it's important to note there are no changes to Smoke Rise boundary other than adding this. So any student or family currently assigned to Smoke Rise will continue to be assigned to Smoke Rise. So there will be no changes to that boundary there. This is simply the addition of an additional area to Smoke Rise. So for those families wondering if they're going to be redistricted, the answer is no. If you are currently assigned to Smoke Rise Elementary School, there is no recommendation to change that zoning. Okay. Next slide, please. All right, and again, you have a number of staffing impacts that we can go more in depth if need be tonight. But basically, we take the enrollments and we look at registrations, and we have something called a ramp, and that's how we allocate staffing. So with the approximately 400 students, we'll also come with teachers that are allotted based on those amount of students and their needs. Okay, so all that will then started to be worked on. Okay, and next slide. All right. Again, here's our feedback framework, and if you want to follow along with us, we always encourage it. We have an email set up that you can always email to us. This is primarily for capital projects, and that's at DCSD Builds, but if you ever have an inquiry, feel free to email it, and we'll do our best to answer it or get it to the people that can answer. Additionally, we have a redistricting website at DeKalbSchoolsGA.org/redistricting, and all the presentations and recordings of previous meetings regarding Idlewood are on that page, and please feel free to go and listen and record and tell us your thoughts as well. For any other project information, we have a capital improvement programming at DeKalbSchoolsGA.org/CIP, and you can keep up to any project that's currently happening across the district. And as well as student assignment planning, again at DeKalbSchoolsGA.org/SAP, and that'll keep you up to date on all the work that the student assignment planning group is currently happening. Okay, and next slide. Okay, so that brings that ends my our presentation, and I just wanted to make sure everyone was well aware of the background and where we're heading forward. And I will turn it back to Dr. Williamson.
Thank you, Chief Hofstetter. We will now move into our Q&A session. Once again, if you have a question, you may type it in the Q&A box at the bottom. Our first question, we have about a total of 20 questions, so we'll start with the first one. Has this change been decided? If so, when will all the movement begin? Are there phases?
Yep, I'll take that one. Yes, it's not decided until the board votes. There's a proposal that we're going to take to the board at our board meeting on February 10th. And once it's voted in or voted down, we'll have to go into potentially go into a different direction. The board votes differently. So nothing is voted and solidified yet. And the other thing, if it's voted in, ideally we will go to work right away to make sure that we align. We've already had conversations with school administration, looking with some of our teachers, looking at the HR situation and everything. So once we know for sure if it's voted forward, we'll go into action, and then we can do an update. We will do updates with the community from both schools on things that we're doing to prep for the new school year. Chief Hofstetter, did you want to add anything, or anyone else on the call for that matter?
No, sir. I think you hit it right on the head.
Okay.
Thank you. As a friendly reminder to our participants as well, if you have a question that you need translated, please also put that in the Q&A, and we have 2 translators on the line to assist you. Next question. Are all the teachers, both in SRE and Idlewood, aware of the changes in their areas?
We have been in contact. Excuse me about that. Yes, we've been in contact. We've actually conducted some meetings at Idlewood with their staff because obviously that is where the current change is taking place. But we also understand the impacts, and we will have a number of future meetings set up there as well. But yes, the principals have been well informed during this process.
Thank you. How will class swapping work? Ms. Brown, would you like to take that one?
Yes, I'll be glad to. Of course, we'll look at the students who are to be rezoned, and we'll look at the programming and needs for those students. And we have to notice what grade level they are in. So, based on this February 10th decision, we'll be able to look at the roster of students and see grade levels, see programming, and look at where those students are to land.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add to that? Thank you, Ms. Brown. Historically, car pickup is chaotic and based on the fire marshal plans are not being completed in the correct space. How will this work with more students?
If I heard the question right, so I can speak to some of that, I think. I'm not sure I'm going to answer the full question at this point. But yeah, we're going to work with the city of Tucker on all that, on what we can do. I can tell you that when the school was built, it was built to the permitting that the fire marshal approved, or else we wouldn't be able to occupy the building. So with that capacity of 984 students, it met all the code ordinances at that time. Now, what we will need to do, because I do understand that there will be more traffic. Again, we're looking primarily, though, probably being in bus traffic, just based on historical ridership. So that being said, we will work with the school and public safety in order to look at some of the flow and the conditions of the flow, and if there's things we can do to help make that more efficient and safe, we will absolutely try to implement.
And one other thing I just want to add, what I talked to Chief Hofstetter about was that I was looking at I think our team can pull it off, a logistics company or organization that can help us to look at some of the dynamics of that parking space, and maybe do something in the next few months that will possibly help. We can't promise that, but we are looking at all of the options. I think Chief Hofstetter is planning on get out that drone and go over the space and get in the lab and begin to kind of hash away with some other ideas so we can release and reduce some of that traffic congestion.
Thank you. Next question. Does Idlewood have a PTO or PTA? How will those accounts be handled separately, or will they be combined?
Yeah, I will tell you, I believe they do have a PTA, but these students, once they come into Smoke Rise, the students are Smoke Rise students. So whatever parent participation that they do, or teacher participation, it will become a part of what happens at the school that the students attend. They won't still be a part of the PTA or the PTO of Idlewood. So they will become a part of Smoke Rise Elementary School.
Thank you. What type of support is being given to SRE administrators regarding these changes?
Okay.
I can tell you from an operational end, we will continue to work with the principal on any place that we can in order to make things more efficient. I know that there's other, schools and leadership and academics and other administrative support. They will be getting additional administrators based on that number of students and allotments. And all that will then be configured to, for everything for next year when this actually occurs. Again, based on board approval. But I'll let some of my other colleagues speak to that if they need a little more in depth.
We've also, from the area office, we've been engaging both principals from Idlewood and Smoke Rise together to brainstorm, to ask questions, and to problem solve. So we were just on a call yesterday talking about staffing and some questions we want to follow up with our HR team. So we're doing it together and supporting each other.
I can also add, if it is voted on to go through, our student assignment department will support our families with anything they need, as well as our schools for transferring the students over. So it will be all hands on deck to support that process as well.
And I would just add that we have been working with multiple chiefs. So while Dr. Brown is working with the principals, I have been working with the other chiefs to be able to help support this process. So I've been working with Chief Hofstetter, I've been working with Chief Stepney Weaver, as well as Chief Mills in HR to be able to help support the principals through this process.
If I could add too, it's a great question. Certainly, the thoughts I'll share are relevant with the potential transition we're discussing. But even aside from this potential transition, our Division of Student Services has a robust catalog of professional development opportunities that we provide to teachers and administrators every day all over the district around serving and supporting the specialized populations of students that our division encompasses, be it students with disabilities, gifted learners, pre-K, exceptional education. And if this transition were to go forward, we remain available and in partnership with Dr. Tatum and her team to provide her staff, her administrative team with whatever professional development experiences, modeling experiences are needed to additionally support the specialized population students that may be a part of this transition.
Thank you so much. For the parents or anyone who needs interpretation, please note that you can also change the language at the bottom of the screen next to the Show Captions button. I understand that you may not be able to access the chat. If that is the case, I just want to make sure that you know that there is another option for you to change the language. Mr. Stevens, if you could assist me in making sure that they have that capability, I really appreciate it. How many new instructional leads will be moved to assist during this time? Ms. Brown, you want to see, you can provide a response for that one?
I'm not sure what instructional leads means. If that's teachers or paras, that's all being looked at in terms of which students and the needs of the students, and reviewing the certification of all staff at Idlewood. That's yet to be determined. That's being looked at now. In preparation.
Yes, thank you. Are these lines being redrawn just for the period of construction, or will some areas be permanently redistricted to SRES?
Yeah, I can take some of that. No, the answer is when we do boundary change, those are in effect until a subsequent boundary change takes place. Now, the reality is that the student assignment planning process is in swing, and that is being conducted monthly, and those recommendations are looking at all the schools. And I would have to turn that over to Dr. Trisilla Weaver and the fine work that her student assignment planning is doing, but they will consider, any future boundary changes for all schools in the area. Doctor?
That's correct, Mr. Hofstetter. All of this will be considered through the SAP process when reimagining all of the boundaries, given some of the overcrowding at many of the elementary schools in the cluster. So all of this will still be looked at as a part of our student assignment planning process.
Thank you so much. Today, the SRE school is undergoing an obvious needed audit. Have the 3 years of parents tell the district something was wrong. Finally, the audit is taking place. It has been ongoing all year, which means that SRE is without an account or even was unable to secure grant money that they were qualified for. How will this work with Idlewood being moved and this school not having a PDA account?
I would say to that one, it will have a, yeah, I don't think we have finance on here or audits, but it will be rectified, and they will have their accounts live and well. So I don't know why they can't have it now. I thought that had been addressed. We'll get back with a message when we respond to the questions that we can't cover. We'll have a full response, and making sure they will have these accounts.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Hofstetter, can you explain how the listed capacity for SRE is shown as 984? The presentation to the board last week said it was 950. And the DCSD press releases when the building was built and opened all said the capacity was 950. How is it now 984, especially considering the board was told it was built for 950?
Okay, so without going into a huge lesson, if you go to our planning website on the operations page, there's a methodology on how capacity is contemplated. So in this case, it is 984. I believe where the 950 number is coming is that will be the new enrollment if approximately the 418 students arrive there. So it'd be 950 students, but the campus is actually currently built for 984, and there's a methodology to how that happens. So I just want to clear that up. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Terry Brown, here's a question for you in reference to parent meetings being held at the school to talk through parent concerns. Why is this not happening? Would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. If it's in regards to the rezoning, I think it's important that we honor our school district's process, that this is the forum for parent concerns. And I know more meetings is taking place as well for the rezoning. If there are any parent concerns, our area office is responsive to individual concerns parents bring forth, and we always partner with Smoke Rise. If there's a larger concern, we partner with Dr. Tatum. So I'll be happy to follow up with Dr. Tatum if there is a concern that's been brought forth outside of rezoning through either the PAC, the PTA, or if we're seeing some other concerns that have been brought through, we'll be happy to partner with her and host a parent session on that.
Thank you. And I just wanted to read the statement that follows that question. It just reads, this would be to avoid parents in this community from leaving this school because they are scared of the unknown. Okay. Is this a permanent boundary change, or will it revert back when the construction is complete?
I'll take that one, Eric. So in short, this is it's a boundary change. We have our student assignment planning process that's going now, and student assignment planning should be wrapping up, I would say, within at least its first cycle within the next 12 months, 12 to 13, probably more like 12 months, or 12 to 14 months. And when it's finalized, a recommendation will come. So if you're a part of SAP, and even if you're not, there are updates on our website, and you can see the discussions that's happening while this is taking place. And this is an urgent matter that needs to happen today. Future boundary considerations for this school or any school across the district will be done through SAP, and these are done. We try to do them within coinciding with our SPLOS project funding. So this cycle, it's plenty of time to get your voices in the space and make this happen, but it's definitely going to be aligned to SAP. I would also go on to say, if there's a recommendation from the committee to change these boundaries again, what we will propose is we would want to allow families who made the transition already from Idlewood to be able to at least finish out their fifth grade year at Smoke Rise. I think that would be tough to have them move twice within their elementary cycle. So we will keep you abreast of that.
Thank you. What support will you be sending in regards to additional administration?
That is being reviewed right now by our HR, our school leadership. We also understand through transition, while allotment gives us a formula, in some of these cases, we will have to go a little bit beyond what the formula provides to make sure that the transition is smooth and fair and equitable for all of our students that are going to be impacted by this, our current Smoke Rise students as well as Idlewood. So that information will come once if it's voted and approved. We will then begin to share those things out, as I mentioned earlier, with the changes and the recommended additional supports for the school.
Thank you.
Also, like to add, as it relates to counselors, social workers, et cetera, there is a student staff ratio that we look at. So if we're adding additional staff, certainly we would look at that student staff ratio that we have available. And in addition, any kind of after school programming as it relates to students participating in after school extended day programs, things like that, those programs will be available to expand based on the amount of space to house the students, hold them, and the staff that we can get to participate in those after school extended day programs.
And again, as stated earlier, we have a formula, right? And that's for traditional models. But again, this transition, well, any transition like this will probably require more, and we will be willing to do that. And we'll work with our departments to get the right balance of support.
Thank you. Why not divide 400 students from Idlewood between the other schools? The buses would pass by Smoke Rise. Let me restate. Why not divide the 400 students from Idlewood between the other schools? The buses would pass by Smoke Rise. Why dump all 400 at Smoke Rise?
Yeah, great question. And that option was actually looked at. I encourage everyone to please go to that website for the redistricting and look at the past discussions and the options that have been presented. Staff did look at that. We did see that how we could, split that up. It just wasn't very efficient for a lot of folks. But one of the other reasons, it just doesn't meet that one guiding principle about minimizing the disruption. And because of the work of the student assignment planning, the feedback we received is just, make this go and make it whole. And that's what we're recommending in order to do.
And I want to add, we're dealing with some really trying times right now in our country. And I think it's important. We're not dumping students. We're transitioning students to a campus that was designed and just brand newly minted to hold the number of students that we're trying to propose. I understand that this could be frustrating because it's a process. We're all going through this, but rest assured that we will provide resources and ample time for us to continue to engage with our community members around their concerns, and we will address those as reasonable as possible. So thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Horton, here's a general statement that was submitted at 6:19. I'm not exactly sure which topic we were discussing at that particular time, but our participant says, we keep saying that there are things that are being looked at. What solutions are being offered?
I think we've discussed that one. We've shared a significant amount of ideas. I think Dr. Towns just spoke about the counseling, the after school program, the additional staffing. We're going to do some transitional work early on. I think that's important for our parents and for our students. If it's voted on to move forward, we want to do some transition activities in the spring so that the families and students can begin to merge. And we'll have to do some staffing and bringing a staff together. This is not an easy it's definitely not an easy thing to do, but we've discussed a significant amount, so we'll continue. And as things arise, if it's approved, we will be sharing these things publicly about the new additional supports. And we're always open to recommendations as we learned some things from these previous meetings that we've had.
Thank you. Will additional funding be provided for students to receive snacks since breakfast may be as early as 10 a.m. or I think they mean lunch, since lunch may be as early as 10 a.m. and as late as 1 p.m.?
I think this is a good question because we do have other schools that are sized this way, and I think maybe a question is coming from that space. So we do have strategies and things that are already happening in our other schools that have a very similar design with the 900 enrollment where we can emulate to some degree. So I would say if there is a need for snacks, that's what our principal and what we're saying, we will definitely be able to provide that, and we will do that with no problem.
I think we've addressed this one, but if not, if anyone has any additional comments, have you spoken with teachers and staff about the impacts this will have on them?
Currently, we've only spoken directly with the staff at Idlewood during this time, but part of this is also to speak to the Smoke Rise staff again and listen to concerns so that we can help address that. Those meetings will be scheduled. We just have not been able to do it in the tight window that we're currently in.
Yeah, we will.
Thank you. Will Smoke Rise be able to increase the pre-K through 3 Form 1 class to 2?
Well, I'll say,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, what's going to happen, we've been talking about this because pre-K is a different system for us. The students who will actually attend, who live in the Idlewood community, they'll still be eligible to go to to be provided services in the Idlewood community. We can look at adding additional class, a pre-K 3, just for the general population that we already have in Smoke Rise. It's a growing need, and so we have been looking at options to add a different programs. I don't think, well, Dr. Sauce is on here. Dr. Sauce, I think we've talked about adding additional classes for pre-K, correct? Pre-K 3.
Yes, sir. We are looking at considering options for expanding our pre-K 3 programming for next year. And Smoke Rise could very well be one of those considerations. Number of factors, fluid situation, but certainly Smoke Rise could be.
Yes.
Thank you. How were Smoke Rise families given options if this was not presented at Smoke Rise or until after the regular school choice application timeframe closed? Only limited space was available for the late school choice applications in January.
The school choice application timeframe. So there's I think we have been there's been discussions about this, and we have, I think, Dr. Weaver, maybe you can help with this one. The timeline for school choice applications. When we talk about choice, the choice that our families have is not if this is going to happen, but more so around if families chose to want to apply for different programs across the district. That's still available. Dr. Weaver, can you elaborate on our school choice timeline?
So we are in the late window option right now, and so there are still opportunities for our families to apply if they are interested in applying. They can just go on our website and we can provide information as it relates to that. I'm not certain right now, to be honest with you, which schools still have openings, but this is something that we can definitely take a look at if it's a special need that we need to look at for these particular schools.
Thank you so much. During the process of rezoning the new boundary, did you look at placing students at North Indian Creek, which is a new school as well?
Yeah, we contemplated several things. However, the criteria that that's in the board policy is again trying to keep intact, but also the goal is to keep the feeder schools in alignment. So Idlewood, as you know, feeds into Tucker Middle School as well as Tucker High School, and so does Smoke Rise. By moving these children to Smoke Rise, they will continue on to the middle school and high school as previously planned, as if they were coming from Idlewood. So it met the tenets of the criteria.
When will the vote take place? When will the board vote on this?
February 10th at the board meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Why are these information sessions rushed for the Smoke Rise community? We deserve 3 in-person sessions like Idlewood.
Our sessions are open to the public, even at the Idlewood community. They were open, and this is one that we're bringing here also for this opportunity, and it was really great. We have 140 staff members, community members on here. We can have another virtual next week, probably one more, and we can talk to our team about it. I think this is a good way to get more people in the space and get the voices heard. So. Thank you for sharing that. We definitely can uplift it.
Thank you.
And it's good feedback for us for future.
Yes. Mr. Hofstetter, here's another question related to the capacity. It's a little lengthy. I'll make sure I read it slowly. According to the building plans pulled and confirmed by media reports, the capacity of SRE is 950. There are over 530 students there now. Where is the 984 number coming from? Also, with the amount of children proposed to move to SRS will be over capacity, operating at over 100%. Has the board discussed the overcapacity and reducing numbers included in the proposed merger?
Yeah, and again, thank you for that question. So capacity, again, we do have that methodology, but we have to think of capacity more as a range because it has a number of variables. And one of those variables meaning is the type of supports and special programs that may be at a school where it reduces class size. And when you reduce class size, you don't have as many classrooms and available for the same amount of children. And what this does is it lowers the capacity. So that is one of the many variables that we put in there. There's also a square footage requirement by the Georgia Department of Education. So when those are planned, even if you're going to see different capacity numbers based on different formulas, but by and large, the school is able to accommodate the amount of students that are going there. Will it be at or near capacity? It's very possible. We're going to monitor that because again, we do not want to create an issue at Smoke Rise by doing this. But I will tell you that the differences between Smoke Rise being a newer design, it has the ability to accommodate higher capacities in terms of things such as wider hallways and restrooms and classroom size compared to some of the other older schools such as Idlewood and Brockett and the other surrounding schools, which were built at very narrow standards back in the 60s. So there's the code has changed, the requirements have changed, and Smoke Rise is on the modern contemporary requirements. And I understand that in the past, there may have been numbers at 950. I've seen some of the records, but you'll also see that at many of our schools, that capacity number can fluctuate. And that can even, again, that's why we always talk about being a range. Thank you, though, for that question.
Thank you.
Dr. Williamson, may I correct one thing? I apologize, but our late registration window actually closed on the 17th. So I misspoke with that date. It's ended on the 17th. But if there are any special circumstances that we need to look at, we'll be more than happy to do so. But I did want to correct that information.
The 17th of January?
Yes, sir. It just closed.
Yeah, we can discuss maybe some special opportunities, but we'll talk about that offline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weaver. Smoke Rise Elementary is focused on improving attendance. Using buses to transport children will highly likely affect attendance and tardiness. How are we resolving this issue?
Here's what I'll say, and Eric, you can go. We have schools that are built same model with more students than this, and we have really good transportation routing and timely entrances. We are at 90% of on-time arrival right now, which is one of the best arrival times that we've had in a significant amount of time. And so we continue. We are anticipating on building a system that is sufficient and effective. And we don't have the getting students to school is something that we do pretty well, and we'll continue to work on that. We're not perfect, but we do it really well. And again, when we start this process and we see challenges and concerns, we know that Dr. Tatum and our parents and our leaders will make sure that we are aware of what's happening and we will adjust. So Chief Hofstad, I don't know if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, when it comes to busing, I mean, first and foremost, it's going to be safe transportation, and that's what we're after. We have a lot of professional staff members there that are very well knowledgeable and very well versed. We have several strategies that we use in order to keep those buses running on time. But as Dr. Horton said, this is a partnership when it comes to school-based operations on campus versus being able to pick up children at their residences and getting them to school safely and on time. And as everyone is already aware, especially at elementary schools, that car rider organization and people following the rules and the map, that's very, very important for the safety and the efficiency of the operation. We will continue to work with the staff on that and with Dr. Tatum as well.
Thank you. Families from Idlewood would be forced to travel over 30 minutes to attend any school functions, parent-teacher conferences, and etc. This may diminish equity in the education experience.
I'll take that. Something that we're doing with, I want to say Carey Reynolds, for our families. They live really far. They live far from their school. We provide the school. We work with the school, and they provide transportation for the families to be able to come to events and things of that nature. And if that's a need, we will be more than willing to do the same thing for our families that will be attending our new Smoke Rise students.
Thank you for that. Why are we not waiting until the SAP is completed to rezone, since it will complete it in approximately 18 months?
Yeah, we tried to hold off, but again, there's two parts to this. One, this should have been taking place back in 2020 when the school originally opened. And again, for the pandemic reasons and all that, those conversations never went anywhere. And the reason why they should have taken place is because they knew the plan at the time was to go ahead, one, obviously the rising enrollment, but also the projects that were taking place at some of the neighboring schools. But this project is on schedule to start off on this summer of 2025 and being able to move these students out of there now. So unfortunately, it kind of preceded the great work of what SAP is doing and that process and method. We have a few situations around the district that are in the same, where getting this lined up with that initiative and the time that it takes for those runways versus being able to keep track on a capital improvement program, getting those in line together, it's just going to take a little bit of time. So we acknowledge that, we recognize it, And that's why we're trying to work with everyone the best we can. But that's how this one has arrived now, and we just couldn't wait any further.
Thank you so much. If this is approved by the board, how soon will families know when they will have to move?
So currently, again, upon board approval on February 10th, that'll be a public announcement. Those families that are impacted in that zone that we just showed earlier, we've already had meetings with them, and we have more meetings scheduled to work with that community to begin letting them know all the different processes that may impact them just as well. So we have a lot of engagement sessions currently happening, and then upon approval, there'll be more happening over the succeeding months. Again, none of this will take place, though. The effective date of any movement will be the first day of school for the 25-26 school year. So August of 2025. It will not impact anything for the remaining school year at this time.
Thank you. This is a question related to staffing, leadership staffing. Will another AP be added?
I can go on record and say absolutely one will be added, with the potential, as we look through this, we talked about the transition potentially for two to be added. It's a large undertaking. Number one, the number of students, and then secondly, just that transition and merging of those students and those families is going to take a lot of work. So we will look at it all.
Thank you. Once the Idlewood renovation is complete in 2027, will students return to Idlewood from Smoke Rise?
And Dr. Williamson, we've answered this one. But so any questions that come up that's repeated, I'm gonna say this one more time. We want to make sure that family student assignment planning, I think that was just a question a second ago that asked that too. Once students are part of the Smoke Rise community, they're not there for temporary holding. This become their permanent home school. And so our goal with student assignment is to look at right size fit. There are other schools in that cluster that have enrollment over capacity, under capacity. And once that recommendation comes forward, that's what will drive the shifts. But our goal, as I stated in this conversation a few minutes ago, if there's a student that already matriculated from Idlewood to Smoke Rise, we will give them the option to finish out at Smoke Rise through 5th grade. We will not have them move for a third time. So any of those questions that come around regarding their placement, we've covered that. And we want to get to some other questions on this call. All right.
Thank you. Please provide a breakdown by grade level that will be transitioned over to Smoke Rise, if we have that information.
We're currently efforting all that as we speak. We do have preliminary lists, but we will not move forward, obviously, until the board, there's a board approval, and then all that'll get broken down. There's other things to contemplate there. The board policy allows for rising 5th graders to remain at their school, but they have to provide their own transportation. We do not have that number yet, so any rising 5th graders that may be in there may opt to stay at Idlewood. And then, we just have a number of transitions that occur. So that's probably the best I can answer at this point.
Who decides which teachers will move to Smoke Rise?
So the new enrollment is based on how we allocate schools. So if we look at, let's just say 950 students will be at Smoke Rise Elementary School next year during this budgeting process, then those amount of teachers based on our allocation formulas that are worked on through Human Resources and the Finance Division will come into play, as well as any supporting resources such as language support, special needs, and other special programming that takes place. But they will be allotted and to formula based on how we do all the other schools of similar capacities and programming. If anybody else would like to jump in there as well.
Yeah, I would just add, I think what's really critical too, first we'll look for the volunteer structure, right? That's order number one. And then the second would be off the tenure list if the volunteer, it doesn't meet the need. So that's how the teachers will be transitioned over to Smoke Rise.
Thank you. What are the impacts on after-school programming?
Well, thank you for the question. As I stated earlier, we do have an after-school extended day program at Smoke Rise, and it is heavily attended. We have approximately 100 students that attend that after-school extended day program. And again, as many students as that program can house after school and hold, we will be glad to accept those students. The staff will be selected internally by the principal. And oftentimes, if we don't have enough staff internally, we can utilize staff from other school buildings that are not participating in an after-school extended day program. And we will be excited to have additional students in those programs.
Thank you. Just one moment while we filter through to try to cover topics that we have not addressed at this time. Is there a list of apartments that will be moving to Smoke Rise if this is approved?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, we have a list, and again, I encourage people to go to that redistricting website. All that has been in past presentations. So if they want to see the different areas that they can look at.
Thank you. Please pardon the delay. I just want to make sure that we get a variety in that we have not touched on. I am very concerned about the learning environment, class sizes, and how instruction will be structured with the addition of incoming students. If approved, okay, we did talk about an additional assistant principal, so we did answer that one already. What elementary schools in Area 2 are targeted to be rebuilt as part of future SPLOST initiatives? Why can't Idawood be a primary target for these initiatives? The HVAC and other improvements that you are making currently at Idawood are standard deferred maintenance items, not a proper facility for the Idawood community.
Yeah, so past history there, Idlewood was recommended at one time to be rebuilt, but that recommended was not supported by the board, and instead it was replaced with just a renovation project. Future SPLOST planning, which will be taking place over the next 18 months, in concert with the student assignment planning, we'll look at all those needs and we'll identify any schools that may need to be rebuilt as part of a larger plan. But that'll happen over the next 18 months.
Is there anyone on the line who can speak on Smoke Rise and the audit? A participant says this is the first time they have been made aware of the audit.
No, there's no one on this call that can speak about that, but it's something we can answer if it's a question about whatever's happening now. If there's anything that we need to report out that we can share, we will. We can make sure that's a question, Dr. Williamson. Let's grab it and put that in our Q&A. All right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we have a lot of questions still related to capacity. A lot of them are the same. Once again, the vote is a public vote at the February 10th board meeting. I've seen that question a number of times. Would it be possible to create a task force so the burden doesn't land on the same parents who are tirelessly trying to support SRE and unifying parents?
As far as for transition, I believe
Yes.
if for transitioning, if it's approved, absolutely. We could definitely work with the school leaders, and it's something that our school principals would work to lead, putting the task force together. Absolutely.
Mr. Hofstadter, a participant is having some problems on the DCSD website, locating the information you mentioned. They do not see it, so perhaps we can lay out some specific directions in the written information that we send back. Would you like to comment on that?
If it's referring to the previous presentations and the recordings of the previous meetings, that is on the redistricting website. If we're still showing the current slide that is up, it would be that slide under that DeKalb Schools ga.org/redistricting, and it should come up right away. It's on the front. I was just looking at it here just a few minutes ago. But in any case, we can also get that information out. We'll make sure we get it out to the principals and other communication channels for all the public. If there was other resources, though, I'm not sure what specifically they're being asked about.
What is the communication strategy and some of the decisions we've discussed here?
Dr. Williamson, you want to talk about that a little bit on communication side?
Yes, once approved, yes, we will present this information in an organized format to both populations. Also pair with Dr. Weaver in ensuring that we communicate the process for making the transition and notifying the families who are affected by the transition.
Okay. Okay.
Will school choice remain available for families elsewhere in the county to choose SRE in the future? What if a family has one child at SRE by school choice, but has siblings coming up soon?
So what we will do is, if this is approved, we will look at the whole process. I will share with you that we are currently reviewing our sibling policy as it relates to our school choice schools. And so all of these things will be under review. We will take a very close look at different situations, but we are looking at sibling policy for all of our choice schools right now. And we will take a look at that certainly for Smoke Rise as well.
Thank you. Is there an estimate on the ESL families being affected and how that support will increase?
Dr. Hall, are you still with us?
Yes, sir. We are currently looking at the list. Nothing is official, so we have not finalized the list until we receive orders from the board. So right now we're just looking at the overall. No services will be minimized. Nevertheless, we will increase allotment and increase the support that we'll be giving to the school through our regular office and also through the resources in Title III.
Thank you. There has been much discussion about capacity. However, what about the change in the culture and sense of community of both groups?
Thank you for that. I love that question. This is the beautiful thing about the people and human capital. We have our family community engagement that we will be bringing in. We have Dr. Weaver's department that will be able to do some support. And most importantly, our school, the leadership. As we design that leadership, we will start, if we wait to July 1st or to the first day of school to start that, to try to build those partnerships and that relationship, it will be a tough transition. Our goal, if this is approved by the board in February, is to get to work right away, and that will require us. I think someone mentioned a task force earlier, and we'll put some funding and support behind it to have a couple of family gatherings, bring communities together to talk, emerge, engage with each other prior to the start of the school year. And it will take time. And I think the most important piece will be the secret to this. We know that the most impactful staff member in a school around on student achievement are our teachers. So we will have to be very intentional in building those relationships between our teachers that are currently in the school, but also currently maybe that's coming over to join that family, the Smoke Rise family. So there's work to be done. Absolutely.
Thank you. Here's a question about data points. Why haven't any real data points been shared about the other options?
I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about, but again, we provided some of those the information where we could for data points. But there was again several other options that were looked at, including splitting schools into different areas. We had an option that not only included Smoke Rise but included Midvale and Livesey and Brockett as well. But again, when we look at minimizing disruption for the intended purposes and not to upend the work of SAP, this was the most efficient process at this point in time that met those criteria and through the district-wide perspective and maximum efficiency.
Yeah, and then the other thing I think those meetings were recorded, if I'm not mistaken. So what we can do is put the links. It's on our website, but we'll put the links in, and when we answer these questions, so you can go back and you can see the different options and data points that we put out.
Thank you. And I know, Mr. Hofstadter, you shared a slide about the boundaries and the lines, but here's a question about clarifying this information, because this participant was told that SRE would only be receiving the best students. Can you clarify if there's any selection of which students are being received by SRE?
Wait, let me take that. Let me take that. We say best students. We count all of our students as the best students. And so I want to say this again. We are one district. Our goal is to make sure that we are giving quality educational opportunities, experiences to all. Another point that I've dug into, I want to make sure we've looked at the CCRP single score. And when you look at Smoke Rise and you look at Idlewood, the single score for 2024, Idlewood's single score for CCRP is higher than Smoke Rise right now. So I think what's really important is that we provide the same quality of education and love and opportunity for every single student. It's not that we're handpicking students and placing them in either the school. It's grounded in the boundaries. And I know Mr. Hofstadter can speak to the boundary portion of how these students were identified. I know we mentioned it, but can you recover that, Eric?
Mr. Hofstadter, you're on mute.
Thank you. Apologize for that. Yeah, if we can go back a few slides to the slide that has the actual boundary. And again, when we look at that density, in order to have enough students to go, but the problem is when you make boundaries, it's very difficult because we want to try to keep neighborhoods intact. Please go up a couple first. Come back down to slide be about 13, I think. One more, please. There you go. So this is the actual area when you drill down. And again, if it works in concert with the slide prior, which will show you the bigger boundaries. But anything from Brockett Road to Montreal Road, that area right there and it is a small geographic area, but that produces approximately 400 students for our schools. And looking at trying to keep intact neighborhoods, efficiency of busing, estimated times, things of that nature, all enriched to reach that the goal. This was the area that has arrived. So I'm not so much sure what else I can say right now about that, but if that's the
I think you
question, then that's
covered it
the
well.
answer there.
Yeah, I think we covered that well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Chief.
thank you. Here's a participant who is interested in the care and concern that we have for our staff. Will any mentoring be provided for the staff and administration while this transition takes place?
I'm going to pass over to Dr. Towns in a second, but we are currently working with potentially bringing in a third party company that specializes in supporting our staff and our and through mental health challenges in general. And I think this will be so necessary. So thank you for that great question, where we could bring those services, of course, free of charge to our staff, right on over to the Smoke Rise community to work on that transition piece and the mental health or the challenges that may come. And this is something we will want to do ongoing.
And just to add what Dr. Horton said, we are very fortunate to have staff who specializes in mental health. And so we have mental health coordinators that can assist in this area. And additionally, we have fantastic counselors and social workers already in both of those buildings. And as I stated earlier, if there is an increase in the student population, we do have a ratio that we utilize whereby we would add additional staff to assist. We have a robust social emotional learning platform called Second Step. If students are having more specific challenges as it relates to their well-being and health. And so we are quite prepared to address any of those issues that should arise. But I will say that being humanly is at the top of the list of ensuring and showing love towards our students and staff will be the most important addition to them transitioning in a smooth way, being caring and loving to those students who are arriving in a new environment along with the staff. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Will teachers have the option to volunteer to transfer? They have been told that they will not have the option to volunteer.
I'll say this. Well, this is if the board approves this, this is something that we can consider. And I think it's fair. We have educators that have a desire to go elsewhere and not be a part of the Smoke Rise community with this transition. We would, of course, work with them, but ideally, we don't want anyone being in a situation where they don't want to be. And so we will work with those potentially who have a desire and do it with care and to try to find placement for them. There's some amazing teachers at Smoke Rise. We would definitely not want to see any of them go, but we also don't want to hold them in a place where they may not feel comfortable, and we can work with that if it's approved by the board.
Thank you so much. It is now 7:25, and we do have some remaining questions. As I mentioned earlier, some of them are repeats from earlier, but we will sift through and make sure that we provide responses to those that we have not addressed at this time. Also, when the meeting is over, if you still have a need to ask questions, the Thought Exchange QR code is displayed on the screen, so you can post your questions there after the meeting ends. And so at this time, I'd like to thank you for your participation and ask Dr. Horton if you have any closing remarks.
Yeah, I do. Again, this is not something that we wanted to call an order to. This is something that we have to do. We walked into this. We all know, and I know everyone on this call feels the same. Our students, all students, are the most critical or the most important thing that we're trying to focus and build support around. And our efforts is to do exactly that. And I know this is not this is not a easy pill to swallow, considering that when you think about the size of students and the number of students that's transitioning over. But to be honest, with the right mindset, with the right hearts, and the right commitment from all of us and our parents, our staff, us here in central office, and our families, we can make this an amazing experience for all 950 students that will be attending Smoke Rise Elementary if it's voted in by the board. So I want to thank you all. You all came out and showed your concerns, and you had questions, and we will do our best to get these back to you within the next week or so. So please continue, and if we can find another time to meet, we will. So stay tuned. Thank you, and have a good night.